Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
Hello. This is Matt Truman. Thank you for downloading this episode. Thank you for sharing with a friend. Today is February the 7th, 2022, and I am Matt Truman. Thank you for downloading this episode. Thank you for sharing with a friend. So today on the podcast, we're going to talk about quite a few things. I'm going to start out with my hometown, Huber Heights. Then we're going to get into a little bit of the Joe Rogan stuff. Then we're going to talk about Ukraine, Russia, and NATO. And then we'll end it after that. So I hope you stick around for this long podcast. All right. So let's start off with my hometown, Huber Heights. At times, old Matty can be impulsive. And I have a sense of humor that is not like a lot of folks, and I get that. And folks have told me that. Sometimes they've told me I'm a jerk. I'm an asshole. Pardon my French. And I get it. I can be. But it's my sense of humor, and I truly don't mean offense to folks. And I made a little joke on our little hometown page that myself and a guy named Brian run, and I've had it. I created it back in 2015 when politics and myself and folks were being censored. I'm not a censor guy. And we'll talk about that a little bit with Joe Rogan. But I'm not one of those cancel guys. And even Whoopi Goldberg. You know, I don't agree with Whoopi Goldberg and a lot of what she says. But should she be canceled for what she said? No. We're humans. We're not perfect, right? Anywho. So I read a post from Mayor Gore. One of his posts about the snowstorm coming up. And I made a joke about it on Brick City. A lot of people laughed at it and recognized it as a joke. I think even the mayor recognized it as a joke. I think folks close to him didn't. And he retorted with another joke. And I thought it was funny too. I was excited to see that. I thought it was good. A little banter, a little humor back and forth. Hey, you want to joke about me? I'm going to joke about you. And I can take it. I certainly can. And I hope other folks recognize this after I explain what's going on with this. I will read the mayor's post, and then I will explain why I made the joke. And then we'll go from there. All right, so from the blue check-marked Mayor Jeff Gore page, he wrote, "Hey everyone, just a couple of things as we get ready for Ice Snowmageddon." So already he's joking around, so I figured it would be okay if I did as well. Anyway, just a couple things as we get ready for Ice Snowmageddon. Our road crews are prepared and ready to do the job you have come to expect of them, and I have faith that they will do the best job possible to get us dug out from whatever mixture it is that's coming. If you have any health issues or emergencies, as always, we have the best EMS services team in the region to help you if you find yourself in a situation which requires help. First of all, I'll stop there and just say, yes, I think Huber Heights EMS teams are fantastic. Okay? So there we go. One of the things you can do to help the road crews is to move as many of your vehicles to the garage or driveway as possible so we can leave as much roadway open to the plows as we can. It allows them to work faster and more efficient if the roads aren't covered with cars on both sides of the street, typically blocking the sidewalk. Now, this is where I laugh, okay? Typically blocking the sidewalk with a car is a ticket-able offense. However, the police understand that in times like this, the most important issue is to get as many cars off the street as possible. Please feel free to block sidewalks if necessary during this storm without consequence. On that, I'm reading that as park your car on the sidewalk. But as you know, when the plows come by, they're going to throw snow and it's going to block you in. You got to dig yourself out. And that's a difficult situation to put folks in. So I laughed at that. All right. Lastly, but most importantly, please remember to check on your neighbors, which is awesome, and make sure that they are okay, or to see if they need anything. Hopefully the ice events isn't horrible and doesn't impact the power grid too much. But if it does, we have to make sure our neighbors are okay. First of all, that's an excellent thing to point out. I commend him for pointing that out. Here in my neighborhood, neighbors were working together. I had a neighbor stuck. Neighbor of mine was out. I come out with a big old coal shovel. Another neighbor came out. We dug them out, and they were on their way. Another neighbor, the same thing. I mean, neighbors were helping neighbors throughout my town, and I know throughout Huber Heights as well. That's just how we are around here, I think. So, yes, important. And that was awesome that he put that out there. Commend him for that. Hopefully everyone is stocked up on plenty of supplies to get you through. And I made a joke about that, and I'll read it here in a minute. Please stay safe, thoughtful as we work through these next few days together, Jeff. So that's what he wrote, right? And I'm kind of spontaneous. I'm kind of impulsive, and I like to joke around. The folks that follow me on my personal page know that generally what I post is just things joking either about myself, being self-deprecating, or joking about how my kids are busting my chops or my wife's busting my chops. You know, it's mostly self-deprecating humor about me. So I can take a joke. I'm good with that. And I felt that other folks could too, but obviously they misunderstand because when I wrote it on Brick City Town Hall, folks don't know me. They haven't talked to me. They haven't interacted with me. They don't really know me. So when they see me writing things, they think, oh, well, Matt's busted Mayor Jeff Gore's chops in the past, so this is just another bereavement. Or this is just another, let me chop him down some more. No, that's not what it was. It really wasn't. It was me trying to be funny. And folks don't know. I thought it was funny. There were other folks that thought it was funny, and other folks that I think know me and know that that's what I do. I just make jokes sometimes. And here's what I wrote. And it's sitting at like number 2 at Brick City right now. Number 2 post that you will read if you go over there. If you're a member, or if you're a member, you can read it. But if you have affiliation with Huber Heights, please join us. It's a political page from 2015. It's been set up to talk about politics. And if folks are on there that don't want to hear about politics or issues happening at city government, then leave and go to another page that will censor you and you can't talk about politics. That's fine. But at Brick City Town Hall, Truman's Town Hall, Brick City Town Hall, Huber Heights Town Hall, we talk about politics that happens in my hometown, the city of Huber Heights. Anyway, I wrote, just in case you missed it, your mayor made a post he shared everywhere else but here. So he shared it on a couple of I'm not on everything Huber Heights because I was booted because, you get canceled places, and those admins canceled me. Anyway, but it was on the real Everything Huber Heights, anything and everything Huber Heights, but he didn't share it with us. But here, I will summarize, not verbatim. So right there, it tells you I'm not speaking what the mayor said. I'm just giving you my little screenshot, and I'm making it a joke. Oh, wow. Snow is coming. Maybe ice too. Pull your cars on the sidewalk so the salt trucks can get by. See, I talked about that. If you put your cars on the sidewalk, you're going to get blocked in. Come on. If you pull them up, in that little driveway area, you're going to get blocked in. You got to dig yourself out. It sucks. Even if you're on the street, you're going to get blocked in. So, it is what it is. So the salt trucks can get by. Buy all the food and supplies you can. Right there, he was like, folks already go out and just overbuy stuff and think, we're never going to be able to get it again. Sometimes that's true. Be more prepared, folks. Be more prepared. Anyway, buy all the food and supplies you can. It's going to be nuts. I love Huber. Now love me. That is all. with a laughing emoji. I thought that would say this is a joke. But I think what got folks was the last part. It was the I love Huber, now love me. Like I said, when I wrote that, it was spontaneous. It was not well thought out. It was just something I was trying to make a joke about. I have a thing for politicians. I cannot stand fake politicians. I like real politicians. I like politicians who stand up for what they believe in. Okay? Right or wrong, I like it. I don't think Mayor Gore is a bad person. I get annoyed with him. I disagree with some of his politics, but I think there's a lot of things he and I agree with. When I lived there and when I talked with him and when I had him on this podcast, the first time I had him on the podcast, he was running for mayor. And I let him talk. You folks can go back and look at this podcast. You can listen to it. I let him talk and tell folks everything you wanted to see. I didn't bust his chops or nothing. I disagreed on some things and I questioned some things and he answered them. That was the podcast. Maybe someday he'll be back on. I don't know. I haven't asked. If he wants to come on here and talk about things and get it out in the open, I'm all ears. We can talk about it all and let everybody hear everything. Because there's a lot of things that have transpired since 2016 when I started the podcast and now that we could talk about and let the folks listen to. And you guys could listen to him, you could listen to me, and you can agree or disagree. That would be on you, right? You give it up to the audience for them to decide. Now, if there are politicians out there who just put it out there and say, here's what I believe, here's what I think is going to be right, here's how I think we're going to move our city or state or country forward, and that's that, I respect that. But if you don't want to put that out there, if you just want to hear people say, yeah, yep, be yes men, then I don't respect that. So when I put all this out there and I wrote this, this goes outside of folks writing, saying, oh yeah, that was funny. No, that wasn't funny. Grow up, whatever. All right. So there were folks that got it, folks that didn't get it. And then the mayor and I had a conversation. It was like 2 hours. We talked, right? And there was a lot of things we talked about and a lot of things that I was frustrated with, a lot of things the mayor was frustrated with. And we had a conversation about it. And I think it would be good to have that conversation here so you folks could hear it. But he would have to be game for it. He can agree or disagree. And, I think folks would understand. Am I going to bust chops on here? No. Am I going to disagree on some ideas like the former city manager? Yes. Am I going to disagree on ideas such as banning medical cannabis? Yes. Am I going to disagree on the downtown plan? Brant Pike revitalization? Yes. Have I told him all that? Yes. Right? And we've talked about it. But I don't hate the guy. Right? Am I upset about the Veterans Memorial? Yes. Right? But I don't hate anyone. Did I support Glenn Otto for mayor? I did. I thought Glenn was a good choice for mayor, right? Even having ran against Glenn. Not because he's smarter or better, but because he has a feel with the people. And I think, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe the mayor has a feel, obviously he got more votes, right? He's got a feel for the voters. So I was wrong about that. Even talking now, I understand that I'm wrong on a lot of things. I've been wrong on a lot of things. But I've been right on quite a bit too. Anywho, so what I'm saying is this. What I wrote on Brick City Town Hall for all the Huber folks listening was meant to be a joke. And the mayor came back and retorted with a joke. And he wrote this. It's a little further down the thread on Brick City Town Hall, but he said, in case you didn't see it, Matt Truman made a post about me. I'm not going to copy it verbatim. See, he's using my vernacular, right? But I'll paraphrase. I do not like the mayor. No, I don't. I will not like him. No, I won't. I do not like him when he got elected and hate him more since being reelected. I refuse to believe he does anything good, and you need to think that too. Oh, yes, you should. That's how you joke. Have a good night, Matt. A little Dr. Seuss for you, ladies and gentlemen. I do not like him. Sam, I am. But I don't hate him. And he said, hate him more. No. And I explained this to him when we had our conversation. And we talked about a lot of things. We you know, to be quite honest with you, we talked about that situation. I said, look, it was something I did spontaneously. I was making a joke. It was not meant to, I guess it was kind of made to offend people, but it was meant to offend people in a joking way. And if you understood me, you would understand that, you know what, I can dish it out, but I can also take it. So I thought that was hilarious that he came back and did that. And I think it would be even better if he came on this podcast. Now, he says he doesn't post things on Brick City Town Hall for a few people because he doesn't want to hear all the things. Well, listen, I will give my guarantee here, and I'll give it to him in person, on the phone, through a text, wherever. You come on the podcast, we'll talk about all the issues. You can give, I'll give you time. I listen to my podcast. I give folks time to speak. I'm not going to interrupt you. You are allowed to talk on this podcast, but I will question things and I will talk about things. And I think it would be a good place for him to go. But hey, that's just me. And there it is, folks. I made a joke and we had a conversation. I don't hate the mayor. I disagree on policy. I've never went after the mayor. Somebody wrote something about you're trying to ruin their career or their life. No, not at all. I would never talk about his job, his professional job. Look, I'm gonna talk about politicians. This is Truman's Town Hall. I'm gonna talk about politicians and what I like and what I don't like. Okay, I've supported Team Huber after I lost. Why? Because I felt. Some folks have not been paying attention long enough to understand that in 2015, we were in a weird spot. We had folks on council that have been there for 20 years. I mean, we still have folks, and I say we because I still feel like I'm a part of it all, but I'm not. I live out here. But you guys have folks that have been on council. You still do for multiple years. And if you keep voting them in, hey, that's what it's all about. That's how it works. But is the direction that Huber Heights is going, is that the way you want it to go? If not, then vote. And if you don't vote, you get what you get. And I've said that in the past as well. All right, folks, there's Huber Heights. There it is. Like it, love it, hate it. It is what it is. That's what I said. That's what I've done. I'm not perfect. Neither is anyone else. And I've admitted on this podcast many times, this is just me talking. Do I know some things? Yeah. From time to time, I know some things. Do I read a lot? Sure. Have I studied history? Yep, I have. Have I paid attention to Huber Heights politics? For many, many years I have. Do I know what's going on there? I do. I talk to a lot of folks. I respect them as people. I don't have to agree with their policies. And that's what folks don't get. They get this friendship thing going on, and they're like, oh, well, man, I can't stand that son of a... Well, it's not about that. It's about policy for me. I don't hate you. I'm going to question your policy. I'm going to say your policy is wrong. I'm going to talk about it sometimes. And that's it. It's not about hate. I love everybody, for crying out loud. Good night. I want to go to heaven someday. Hating ain't going to get me nowhere. I mean, we're allowed to question things, are we not? All right? I'm not trying to cancel anybody. I'm not trying to say, we need to recall the mayor. Now, have I ever said that? No. I've never supported a recall in the city of Huber Heights. One. Never. I think that is creepy, shady politics. That's just me. All right. Let's move on to Joe Rogan.
Hello, friends. I wanted to make a video to address some of the controversy that's been going on over the past few days. And first of all, to say thank you to everyone that sent love and support. I truly, truly appreciate it. And it's been very nice to hear from you. I wanted to make this video, first of all, because I think there's a lot of people that have a distorted perception of what I do, maybe based on sound bites or based on headlines of articles that are disparaging. The podcast has been accused of spreading dangerous misinformation, specifically about 2 episodes, a little bit about some other ones, but specifically about 2. One with Dr. Peter McCullough and one with Dr. Robert Malone. Dr. Peter McCullough is a cardiologist, and he is the most published physician in his field in history. Dr. Robert Malone owns 9 patents on the creation of mRNA vaccine technology and is at least partially responsible for the creation of the technology that led to mRNA vaccines. Both these people are very highly credentialed, very intelligent, very accomplished people, and they have an opinion that's different from the mainstream narrative. I wanted to hear what their opinion is. I had them on, and because of that, those episodes in particular, those episodes were labeled as being dangerous. They had dangerous misinformation in them. The problem I have with the term misinformation, especially today, is that many of the things that we thought of as misinformation just a short while ago are now accepted as fact. Like, for instance, 8 months ago, if you said, if you get vaccinated, you can still catch COVID and you can still spread COVID, you would be removed from social media. They would ban you from certain platforms. Now, that's accepted as fact. If you said, I don't think cloth masks work, you would be banned from social media. Now, that's openly and repeatedly stated on CNN. If you said, I think it's possible that COVID-19 came from a lab, you'd be banned from many social media platforms. Now, that's on the cover of Newsweek. All of those theories that at one point in time were banned were openly discussed by those 2 men that I had on my podcast that have been accused of dangerous misinformation. I do not know if they're right. I don't know, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a person who sits down and talks to people and has conversations with them. Do I get things wrong? Absolutely, I get things wrong, but I try to correct them. Whenever I get something wrong, I try to correct it because I'm interested in telling the truth. I'm interested in finding out what the truth is. And I'm interested in having interesting conversations with people that have differing opinions. I'm not interested in only talking to people that have one perspective. That's one of the reasons why I had Sanjay Gupta on, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who I respect very much, and I really enjoyed our conversation together. He has a different opinion than those men do. I had Dr. Michael Osterholm on at the very beginning of the pandemic. He is on President Biden's COVID-19 advisory board. I had Dr. Peter Hotez on, who is a vaccine expert. I'm interested in finding out what is correct, and I'm also finding out how people come to these conclusions and what the facts are. Now, because of this controversy, and I'm sure there's a lot of other things going on behind the scenes with these controversies, but Neil Young has removed his music from the platform of Spotify, and Joni Mitchell and apparently some other people want to as well. I'm very sorry that they feel that way. I most certainly don't want that. I'm a Neil Young fan. I've always been a Neil Young fan. I'll tell you a story at the end of this about that. One of the things that Spotify wants to do that I agree with is that at the beginning of these controversial podcasts, like specifically ones about COVID, is to put a disclaimer and say that you should speak with your physician and that these people and the opinions that they express are contrary to the opinions of the consensus of experts, which I think is very important. Sure, have that on there. I'm very happy with that. Also, I think if there's anything that I've done that I could do better is have more experts with differing opinions right after I have the controversial ones. I would most certainly be open to doing that. And I would like to talk to some people that have differing opinions on those podcasts in the future. We'll see. I do all the scheduling myself, and I don't always get it right. these podcasts are very strange because they're just conversations. And oftentimes I have no idea what I'm going to talk about until I sit down and talk to people. And that's why some of my ideas are not that prepared or fleshed out, because I'm literally having them in real time. But I do my best, and they're just conversations. And I think that's also the appeal of the show. It's one of the things that makes it interesting. So I want to thank Spotify for being so supportive during this time. And I'm very sorry that this is happening to them and that they're taking so much heat from it. And so now the Neil Young story. When I first of all, I'm not mad at Neil Young. I'm a huge Neil Young fan. I've always been a Neil Young fan. When I was 19, I was a security guard at a place called Great Woods in Mansfield, Massachusetts. It's an outdoor concert amphitheater, and Neil Young was playing there. And that was the last day I worked there. I quit during the Neil Young concert. The job was kind of crazy because there was a lot of times it was fights broke out and stuff, and I think I probably got like $15 an hour, and I was not about to get beat up for $15 an hour. So I would bring a hoodie with me whenever I worked. So in case the shit hit the fan and it got too crazy, I would just put my hoodie on and leave and cover my security outfit, my security shirt. So one day during a Neil Young concert, there's the amphitheater, the way it's set up is there's a covered area outside that has seats, and then there's a lawn area behind it. And the lawn area during the Neil Young concert, they got a little rowdy. It was cold out, and they started bonfires. So they had these raging fires on the lawn, and we were supposed to go and put these fires out and stop them. So we tried for a little while, but then brawls started breaking out, and it started getting crazy. And I was like, fuck this. So I put my hoodie on, I zipped it up, and I left. And I drove home, and as I was driving home, I was singing, "Keep on rocking in the free world." That was my last day on the job. I don't even think I collected my last check. So no hard feelings towards Neil Young, and definitely no hard feelings towards Joni Mitchell. I love her too. I love her music. Chucky's in Love is a great song. I don't know what else I can do differently other than maybe try harder to get people with differing opinions on right afterwards. I do think that that's important, and do my best to make sure that I've researched these topics, the controversial ones in particular, and have all the pertinent facts at hand before I discuss them. Again, I'm not trying to promote misinformation. I'm not trying to be controversial. I've never tried to do anything with this podcast other than just talk to people and have interesting conversations. I didn't plan it. I can't believe it's as successful as it is. It was never really an idea that I had. The podcast started off as just fucking around with my friends and having fun and talking. And then when it became popular, other people wanted to come on, and I was like, oh, it'd be cool to talk to that person. Oh, he's interesting. Oh, she's got a cool book out. And then, boom, it's become what it is today, which is like some out-of-control juggernaut that I barely have control of. So my pledge to you is that I will do my best to try to balance out these more controversial viewpoints with other people's perspectives so we can maybe find a better point of view. I don't want to just show the contrary opinion to what the narrative is. I want to show all kinds of opinions so that we can all figure out what's going on, and not just about COVID, about everything, about health, about fitness, wellness, the state of the world itself. It's a strange responsibility to have this many viewers and listeners. It's very strange, and it's nothing that I prepared for, and it's nothing that I ever anticipated. I am going to do my best in the future to balance things out. I'm going to do my best. But my point of doing this is always just to create interesting conversations and ones that I hope people enjoy. So if I pissed you off, I'm sorry. And if you enjoy the podcast, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to Spotify. Thank you all the supporters. And even thank you to the haters, because it's good to have some haters. It makes you reassess what you're doing and put things into perspective. And I think that's good too. All right. Much love to you all. Thank you to everyone. And I'm going to do my best.
All right. That was the full first video that Joe Rogan put out. that he apologized when Neil Young pulled his music from Spotify for this so-called misinformation. Now, we'll talk about that here in just a second, but the one thing that stood out to me on that whole deal was when he would bring an extra shirt to cover up his security shirt to bounce and leave his buddies hanging to deal with the melee that was left behind. Doesn't that say something? Look, I like Joe Rogan, but come on now. I don't know. When I was a young dude, I wouldn't leave my boys hanging. Come on now. Anyway, nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about him bouncing when other folks are having to deal with the melee and the fires and all this. Anyway, I like Joe Rogan. We've played him on the podcast. But does he deserve to be canceled for having a conversation with doctors? Peter McCullough, we've played him here on the podcast. Dr. Robert Malone, who essentially created mRNA technology. I mean, those folks need to be heard. Just as he was talking about, Sanjay Gupta needs to be heard. Everyone should have a voice in what we're dealing with. I know there's folks, nobody, only the experts need it. Well, no, we're all dealing with it. We all have a voice. We all have a say. This is America. Whether people listen to the voice or whether people say, oh, yes, I agree with what they say, is a different story. For crying out loud. It is what it is. Whether you believe in what the government tells you about COVID-19, whether you believe in a vaccine or not a vaccine, it should be a discussion. Science is about experiments and tests and seeing what is accurate and where it goes. Reevaluation. The scientific method. I mean, when you're in 8th grade, 7th grade, whatever, observe and question is the first step in the scientific method. Research the topic area. Hypothesis. What is a hypothesis? It's a guesstimate of what you're trying to research, discover, test the experiment, right? Analyze the data. There's a lot of folks out analyzing the data, and it just gets discontinued or it just gets put aside by other folks. Report conclusions, and then continue to do it. That's the entire scientific method, but we've thrown that out with this whole coronavirus. Just trust the experts. Whatever we're telling you, that's what's going to be. Whatever the mainstream media is putting out there, that's exactly what's going to happen, and that's what you need to follow. Well, things change, and things are changing with this. So when it comes to Joe Rogan on that aspect, I agree. And I think we should give him a pass on having conversations with a multitude of folks discussing a multitude of ideas. Ideas are important to have discussions about. Then there was a compilation that I'm not going to play here. I think I watched it, and it was of Joe Rogan using the N-word. It wasn't very good, folks. It was horrible. It was a lot. And I apologize for his language on his... We don't play a lot of foul language here. I try not to use it a lot. I want it to be as clean as possible on this podcast, but that's me. Other folks can do what they want. They talk how they want. I was in the Army. Sometimes I slip up. It is what it is. I don't blame it on the Army, but doggone it, me and the soldiers, we talk a certain way to get the job done. We did. But anywho, yeah. He used the N-word, and somebody took him from 12 years of using the N-word. They made a compilation of it. He got word of it, and he made another apology. They are coming after this dude because he has listeners. More listeners than CNN, Fox News, MSNBC combined. Folks are interested in the other folks that Joe Rogan has on his podcast. And this was the other apology that he made.
Hello, friends. I'm making this video to talk about the most regretful and shameful thing that I've ever had to talk about publicly. There's a video that's out that's a compilation of me saying the N-word. It's a video that's made of clips taken out of context of me of 12 years of conversations on my podcast, and it's all smushed together, and it looks fucking horrible, even to me. Now, I know that to most people, there is no context where a white person is ever allowed to say that word, never mind publicly on a podcast. And I agree with that now. I haven't said it in years, but for a long time, when I would bring that word up, like if it would come up in conversation, instead of saying the N-word, I would just say the word. I thought as long as it was in context, people would understand what I was doing. Like that context was part of the clip we were talking about Red Fox, how Red Fox said that word on television in the 1970s, and how times have changed so much since then. Or about how Richard Pryor used it as one of the titles of one of his albums. Or I was quoting a Lenny Bruce bit, or I was quoting a Paul Mooney bit, or I was talking about how Quentin Tarantino used it repeatedly in Pulp Fiction. Or I was talking about how a Netflix executive, ironically, used it because he was trying to compare it to or just saying the word out loud, entire English language, because it's a word where, like, if a white person says that word, it's racist and toxic, but a black person can use it and it could be a punchline, it could be a term of endearment, it could be lyrics to a rap song, it could be a positive affirmation. It's a very unusual word, but it's not my word to use. I'm well aware of that now, but for years I used it in that manner. I never used it to be racist because I'm not racist, but whenever you're in a situation where you have to say, I'm not racist, you fucked up. And I clearly have fucked up. And that's my intention to express myself in this video, to say, there's nothing I can do to take that back. I wish I could. Obviously, that's not possible. I do hope that, if anything, that this can be a teachable moment. Because I never thought it would ever be taken out of context and put in a video like that. And now that it is, holy shit, it looks bad. And it's part of also me doing this podcast for thousands of hours, thousands of episodes, over 12 years. I said a lot of fucking stupid shit, which is fine when you're talking about most things, but not when you're talking about race. And there's another clip that I have to address. There's a clip from 11 years ago. I was telling a story on the podcast about how me and my friend Tommy and his girlfriend, we got really high. We were in Philadelphia, and we went to go see Planet of the Apes. And we didn't know where we were going. We just got dropped off by a cab, and we got dropped off in this all-black neighborhood. And I was trying to make the story entertaining, and I said, we got out, and it was like we were in Africa. It's like we were in Planet of the Apes. I did not, nor would I ever say that black people are apes, but it sure fucking sounded like that. And I immediately afterwards said, that's a racist thing to say. Planet of the Apes wasn't even in Africa. I was just saying there's a lot of black people there. But then I went on to talk about what a positive experience it was and how much fun it was to go to see this movie in a black neighborhood. It wasn't a racist story, but it sounded terrible. And like I said, you can have clunky stories about anything, but not about race. And so I deleted that whole podcast, but obviously somebody made a clip out of it and taken out of context. It looks terrible, but it looks terrible even in context. It's a fucking idiotic thing to say. And I was just trying to be entertaining. I certainly wasn't trying to be racist. And I certainly would never want to offend someone for entertainment with something as stupid as racism. My hope is that, look, I can't go back in time and change what I've said. I wish I could. Obviously, that's not possible. But I do hope that this can be a teachable moment for anybody that doesn't realize how offensive that word can be coming out of a white person's mouth, in context or out of context. My sincere and humble apologies. I wish there was more that I could say, but all of this is just me talking from the bottom of my heart. It makes me sick watching that video, but hopefully at least some of you will accept this and understand where I'm coming from. My apologies and much love. My sincere, deepest apologies and much love.
All right. There that was. So now that's the latest installment of the Joe Rogan saga that is happening around the world. I'm not fully white. No, I did a DNA test. I'm Native American and Congolese. Folks who know where Congo is, it's in Africa, and they're black folks. So I'm partially black and Native American. I was shocked to see that. I thought I was Irish. Turns out I'm more German than Irish. And then I think there's some Scandinavian. But then I found out I was Native American. It's like 0.6%. But I still can't use any of the pejoratives for Native American. And I'm 0.2% Congolese. And I couldn't use that word that he was using at all. However, even though I have that blood flowing through me, he apologized. Good on him. We have to apologize if we screw up. Look, I screwed up. I made a joke about the mayor of Heber Heights. I apologize, right? Some people will accept it. Some people will say, nah, you're an idiot for apologizing. It is what it is, right? But at the end of the day, we're all human. We all make mistakes, man. We all screw up. One person, one group of people, one color, one generation isn't better than the other. We're just all trying to figure this thing we call life out. We're just trying to figure it out. And we either learn how to get along with each other or we're going to die separate. Especially here in America. We either learn to love each other or we're going to be what? I mean, we got to learn to love each other. Yes, we have disagreements. We work those out. We talk about them. Okay? Life's different now. It's a lot different than... Look, I'm 44. I'll be 45 this year. It's a lot different than when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I don't know, maybe it's just being a kid, but things were different back in the 80s and 90s. Things are a lot more strenuous now. Things are a lot more immediate. There are more consequences now. Okay? And no, we don't have to accept this cancel culture that's floating around. Don't be canceled. You know, you have to fight back and believe what you believe. Stand up for what you believe in. But at the same time, the folks you disagree with, guess what? You have to respect that. And if we all got on that page where we say, okay, I disagree with you, but I respect you for standing up for what you believe in, we'll be in a better place. But we don't, but we should. We don't, but we should. And, wow. I mean, folks, life is too short to worry about the silly stuff. And the silly stuff being people hating you, people not liking you, people saying bad things. We need to worry about what's really happening. Give it up. Give it up. Give up the hate. Give up the hate. Because, I don't know. I've been predicting on this podcast for several podcasts back in November, I think, of last year, that Russia will invade Ukraine, and there may be something like a World War III happening if that goes down. Now, if what I think is going to happen, and I'll play some clips here in a minute. The folks who have really paid attention to this podcast understand that I've predicted after the Olympics, Russia will invade Ukraine. That's why Vladimir Putin was, transition. That's why Vladimir Putin was a guest of honor with Xi Jinping of China. And they're building an alliance. What would their alliance be? Well, you got China, Russia. Those are two big countries. Then you have Belarus. You have North Korea. You have Iran. Okay. Iran still working on their nuclear weapons. China and Russia already have theirs. So this thing that's happening that I've been talking about since November, that's just heated up throughout all of media now, right? We were the first, one of the first, to tell you folks, listen, there's some things happening in Ukraine and Russia that you folks need to pay attention to. Now everyone's talking about it, but we were one of the first to bring it to your attention, and now it's everywhere. Huh? Truman's Town Hall brings that to you, and then now it's everywhere. I pay attention, folks. I pay attention to local politics, state politics, and national and world politics, governments, and what's happening around the world. I pay attention to these things, right? And I was one of the first people before you had generals and other folks coming out saying, well, it's going to be after the Olympics. Why did I say it was going to be after the Olympics? I said it was going to be after the Olympics because Russia does not want to interfere with China's Olympics. I said that. And it also has something to do with the weather. In Ukraine and Russia, the tanks are going to move a lot better on frozen ground than they would on soft ground or muddy ground, which is their agricultural area. You know, they grow a lot of wheat, and we talked about this on several podcasts back, right? Okay, I do my research. I read books. Ooh. And I study history. I'm a student of history. I love talking about history and world history. I received 100% in college for Mesoamerican history studies. I did. I like to understand what happens in Central America. Anyway, moving on. So we're talking about Russia, Ukraine, NATO, all that good stuff. Let's play some clips because I'm just going to bloviate about nonsense. So let's hear what the world media has to say. Let's start with the prediction that I heard from a U.S. general. I'm not. I was just a sergeant in the United States Army. Let's listen to former General Jack Keane talk about when he believes Russia will invade Ukraine.
I want to bring in Jack Keane now, Fox News senior strategic analyst. And sir, good morning. Welcome back to our coverage here. Michael Waltz, a Republican from Florida, on a bit earlier today. Here is how he sees it, and then we'll ask you to size up this timeline. Watch.
I do think it's imminent. It's very likely that Putin is going to invade. And what does it mean for the United States? It means destabilized Europe. Putin believes he can reconstitute the old Soviet Union and challenge the United States on the world stage.
So that is the backdrop. Do you agree with that, General? Let's start there.
Well, let's start with the timeline itself. Listen, weather is a factor in most military operations, and it certainly is here. So our audience understands heavy armor operations supported by artillery. You need solid ground to do that. There's a mild winter in Ukraine, so therefore it's taken longer for the ground to freeze. It is frozen now, and certainly this is ideal conditions to conduct those armor operations that, as I discussed, certainly air power would support it. But there's another factor here as well, and that is the Beijing Olympics. Putin is going to it on 4 February. It ends on 20 February. He will not conduct an invasion during that time, in my judgment, and detract from his cohort and his friends' major propaganda venture, which they have invested years and billions of money into. But here's another factor. The ground begins to thaw in mid-March. So the Olympics end on the 20th. We got about a month or so with favorable conditions to support heavy armor operation. It doesn't mean they cannot do it when the ground thaws and you got more mud than anything else. It's more challenging then. Favorable conditions end around mid-March in terms of the timeline.
General, what do you think about this proposal, the possibility of the president deciding to send 5,000 more troops to the region? Like, what would they be doing? Is that a deterrence? Would they be doing any fighting? I don't think that they've spelled that out well enough.
Yeah, well, certainly Putin's objectives here, as we've discussed many times, he doesn't want a flourishing democratic capitalistic society right on his border that is only 300 miles from Moscow, and that's what his interest in Ukraine has been from the outset. His second major interest is to undermine and weaken NATO itself. What the president has done in meeting with his advisor, he's made a major policy shift here. We have been talking about for weeks that we should be doing preemptive action to deter Putin, not just threats of actions that we're going to take after an invasion, do something before. We provided some military aid, not nearly enough, in my view. And now we're going to put some troops in NATO countries to reinforce those countries, not just troops, from what I understand, air power and warships as well from the United States. Decision not made, likely made later this week. Good step, something that should have been done earlier. And that shows some intention and seriousness on the part of the United States. These are the kind of things that Putin respects. I don't believe that in of itself will deter the invasion. But certainly it's a step in the right direction. There's so much more that we could do. All those things that we're talking about doing after the invasion, many of those should be ongoing right now. And Putin would get a taste of what this really means to him in terms of his economy, which is at 8% inflation. We know what 6% is doing to us. And certainly, if we were squeezing him economically right now and telling him, listen, we'll turn the valve off as soon as you withdraw your army from Ukraine, and we have complete justification for doing it. For Putin to say, look, and I can move my troops around my country all I want to do, that's up to me. In theory, that's correct. In fact, when you put an army and position and prepare it for a major invasion, that is something that we have a right to respond to, and we should have done that by now.
All right, folks, that was former General Jack Keane about 2 weeks ago. We were talking about this 2 months ago, last year. Good night. Last year, after the Olympics. The Olympics are happening. I watched some of them last night. Me and the girls were watching figure skating, and I don't know why. We were rooting for America. It was a girl named Karen Chin for the United States. And we made a joke. See, we joke around here. I mean, it's all about joke. We said, of course America has a Karen on the Olympic team. Anyway, it is what it is. She did well. Congratulations, Karen Chen. You did awesome. You were the best because you're an American. Anyway, so we've predicted that after the Olympics on this podcast, if Russia is going to invade, which I think they are, it will be after the Olympics because they're teaming up with China. Because once Russia invades Ukraine, they think they're going to overwhelm the world. They think they're going to overwhelm NATO. They think they're going to overwhelm everyone. The U.S., Canada, Britain, Estonia, Latvia. Oh, folks, we're in strange times. Y'all thought, after 2020, I can't wait for 2021. Like when the ball drops, things are just going to change. No, 2021 sucked. 2022 is going to be worse. I hate to be the pessimist, but stock up on food and ammo. Anyway, We're going to play some news clips from around the world talking about recent issues, day or two, about what is happening in the Ukraine and Russia, what is happening around Belarus. Russia has deployed troops to Belarus. Russia has deployed. Look, I'm a former medic. Guess what? Mayor Gore was a former medic. We've talked about this, right? All right. And the U.S. Army. All right. He and I have a lot more in common than you folks really understand. Anyway, so I was a former medic, and I understand that when you send blood, and they being the Russians, are sending blood to these areas. When you send blood, there are certain things that you're like, what's up with that? Is it a feint? It could be. It could be a feint trying to get, the United States and NATO to do what Russia wants them to do. I don't know. It could be. We'll see. Here's some other reports from around the world. So we got DC News out of Germany, France 24 out of France, WeOn News out of India. We're going to play all those clips, and then we're going to end the podcast. All right, we're running on about an hour right now, but you folks, you need to hear this stuff. You really do. All right, so here we go. Let's play some clips.
Our top focus at this hour. Now, tensions are running deep in Ukraine. Even as Russia maintains it is not planning a Ukrainian invasion, Russia is, however, carrying out aerial drills just 75 kilometers from the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Now, 2 Russian long-range strategic bombers took part in joint military exercises with Belarusian air forces. Now, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, the Russia strategic bombers conducted maneuvers for approximately 4 hours in Belarusian airspace. The mission came as the Kremlin moved troops from Siberia and the Far East to Belarus for sweeping joint drills. Satellite images taken on Friday show heavy Russian military deployments in southern Belarus, aircraft, troops, and air defense systems at military bases in the towns of Yelsk, Lunanets, and Rechetsa. U.S. officials say that Russia has in place about 70% of the combat power it believes Moscow would need for a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and is sending more battalion tactical groups to the border. In the last 2 weeks, the number of battalion tactical groups in the border region has risen to 83 from 60, and 14 more are in transit by Russian military units. Meanwhile, Ukraine received another consignment of weapons from the United States as part of defense aid, totaling to $200 million. Washington has said that it would continue to support Ukraine amid concerns over tens of thousands of Russian troops on its border. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has said that there had been a significant movement of Russian military forces into Ukraine's northern neighbor, Belarus, in recent days. The Kremlin describes it as a rehearsal for repealing external aggression. The Allied Resolve exercises will be running until February 20th. Moscow said its forces will withdraw after the drills. Now, in support of NATO troops, U.S. soldiers landed at Wiesbaden military base in Germany. The troops are from the 18 Airborne Corps. As NATO looks to reinforce its eastern flank, senior members of the U.S. military arrive in Poland. The military deployment is part of the Western Allies' reaction to Russia's military presence near the Ukrainian border. Now, on Wednesday, the United States had announced that the deployment of nearly 3,000 American troops to Eastern Europe in the coming days. Around 1,700 soldiers from the 82nd Airborne Division are due to be stationed in Poland on a temporary basis. Now, the U.S. has already about 4,500 troops in Poland, in both a NATO and bilateral capacity. Meanwhile, Europe is scrambling to intercept the conflict ahead of traveling to Moscow and Kyiv. French President Emmanuel Macron spoke with NATO head Jens Stoltenberg about the Ukraine crisis. Macron also spoke with British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. With Stoltenberg, Macron insisted on finding a path to de-escalation through dialogue. The French leader will attempt to make progress on the issue during meetings with Vladimir Putin as well in Moscow, which will take place on Monday, and with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv on Tuesday. Now, civilian self-defense training also continued on the outskirts of Kiev. Volunteers have joined former military personnel to learn how to handle weapons and administer first aid. Kiev residents from diverse age groups came to the outskirts of the city to be trained in the basic knowledge of how to defend themselves in case of an invasion. Now, in Ukrainian city of Kharkiv, thousands of people marched on Saturday. Ukrainians gathered to protest against any possible Russian invasion and to demonstrate unity with the rest of Ukraine. Kharkiv is just 40 kilometers from some of tens of thousands of Russian troops massed at the border of Ukraine. Now, if Russia invades some of Kharkiv's, over 1 million people say they stand ready to abandon their civilian lives. They will wage a guerrilla campaign against one of the world's greatest military powers.
All right, so that was a report out of WION News in India. Here's a report from France 24 English.
A contingent of U.S. troops landed in Poland this Sunday as part of the West's response to recent tensions with Russia. Altogether, the U.S. is deploying 3,000 additional soldiers to Eastern Europe and Germany. This Sunday, the White House National Security Advisor said that they are not being sent to start or fight a war. He also said that Russia could invade Ukraine within days or weeks, but could also still opt for a diplomatic path forward. Well, for more on the tensions over Ukraine, we can speak to our international affairs editor, Armin Georgian, who joins me in the studio. Armin, what have we been hearing from Ukrainian officials? Are they echoing what we're hearing from the U.S.?
Well, Ukrainian authorities today have expressed gratitude for the support they're getting from international partners, both in terms of military help and the financial support package as well. But they don't seem to like this talk about imminent war. So, for example, the Ukrainian foreign minister tweeted just this evening, "Don't believe apocalyptic scenarios." And this is also what President Zelensky was trying to push back against in his press conference on January the 28th, when he said that encouraging panic destabilizes the Ukrainian economy and thus serves the Kremlin's agenda, according to him. So today we've seen a similar pattern of Kiev expressing gratitude for foreign support, but also pushing back once again against this talk of imminent invasion, with the advisor to the Ukrainian president saying today the chance of finding a diplomatic solution is still substantially higher than the risk of further escalation.
And Armin, the French president is going to be doing a bit of a diplomatic tour this week. He's heading to Moscow Monday, then to Kiev on Tuesday. Can Emmanuel Macron actually achieve anything with this?
Well, the problem is he's walking a tightrope between Russia and Ukraine. He's visiting both capitals, Moscow and Kiev. And in the past, Russia has looked to France and to Germany to put pressure on the Ukrainian authorities to pursue the Minsk agreements. But if Macron tried to do that now, in the current circumstances, it would be a bit of a red flag to the Ukrainian authorities. And meanwhile, what can France actually offer Putin in terms of a new security relationship between the West and Russia? Well, certainly Macron can put forward ideas and Washington. That's why in his phone call with Macron at the end of last month, Putin stressed the role of NATO and of the West in general.
All right, Armin Georgian, our international affairs editor, thank you very much for that.
That was a report out of France 24 News. Carrying on. Next up, DW News out of Germany. Is Germany blocking Ukraine from defending itself against Russia?
We begin this hour in Ukraine, where the first shipment of additional American military aid has arrived, according to the U.S. Embassy there. This is part of a package worth $200 million promised to Kiev last week by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The initial delivery includes defensive weapons and ammunition as the country prepares for possible Russian aggression. Moscow has deployed some 100,000 troops along its border with Ukraine, but insists it has no plans to launch an attack.
The Russian military flexing its muscles in the Vornech region bordering Ukraine. Moscow denies it's planning an invasion, but with this slick video released by its defense ministry, it at least wants to send the message that it's ready to fight. There is real concern in the region about Russia's motives. Russian troops are now positioned in Belarus, all along Russia's border to Ukraine, and are massed in eastern Ukraine, where fighting has been ongoing for years. Further to the north, the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are promising to support Ukraine with shipments of weaponry and military support, arguing that diplomacy alone can't prevent an armed conflict. The aggressor always weighs the possible losses and likely damage. I think that a strong state capable of defending itself is really the only way to increase the chances of a peaceful resolution. However, it's a principle of deterrence not endorsed by Germany, which has disappointed Kiev by refusing to supply weaponry to Ukraine. Now, off-the-cuff comments by Germany's naval chief have added more fuel to the diplomatic fire. Kai-Achim Schönbach, on a visit to India, said Russian President Vladimir Putin probably deserved respect, and that the Crimean Peninsula, annexed by Russia, would not return to Ukraine.
Just what has happened in Ukraine. Okay, the Crimean Peninsula is gone. It'll never come back. This is it. This is a fact. And we have to learn that political issues are factual questions and not emotions.
These remarks have now cost him his job, and the faux pas has added to the misgivings in Kiev over Germany's stance on Ukraine. But with the uncertainty looming, Ukraine has been assured that it doesn't stand alone. The UK sent anti-tank missiles earlier this week, and the first delivery of U.S. military supplies has already touched down. Meanwhile, residents in Kiev formed a human chain in celebration of Ukraine's National Unity Day, hoping that opposing sides can still come together and hold on to their stated goal of a diplomatic solution.
Let's bring in DW correspondent Matthias Bullinger, who joins us from Kiev. Matthias, what exactly has been delivered, and what does this mean for the conflict now?
Well, Ukraine is now procuring weapons from many countries. There was this big shipment from the US. There have been deliveries from Britain. Also, other countries, the Baltic states and the Netherlands, have announced shipments. It's mostly about light weapons that are easy to use and effective in case of an invasion. Anti-tank weapons, of course, complicated military systems are less urgent on the list, as it would take time to install them and train soldiers. So it's mostly weapons that would make an invasion by Russia more costly. This is the idea now, to deter Russia by making an invasion costly.
Now, aside from deterrence, there's also been a flurry of diplomatic activity aimed at diffusing tensions. But now the United Kingdom says the Kremlin is trying to install pro-Russian leadership in Ukraine. What has the reaction been there to this accusation?
This press release is raising more questions than it provides answers. They gave a list of 4 former officials of the Yanukovych administration. That's the administration that was ousted in the Maidan protests in 2014, saying the Kremlin wants to install them, but how they want to install them and how what strategy they're using. Would this be people who are on the list, for example, after a possible invasion, or is there any other plan? There's no answers to that, so this is kind of very strange and hard to understand information. These people are not popular, so one thing we couldn't possibly exclude is that Russia wants to somehow spur a popular movement to install them.
I do want to ask you about some of the controversy in Germany right now regarding the comments made by the country's now ex-Navy chief, as we saw in that report there. How has Kiev reacted to what he said?
I think these mentions of this now retired Navy chief have really galvanized a feeling that has been lingering in Kiev, that Germany is an unreliable partner, because the two main reasons are Nord Stream 2, which would, as people see it here, consider considerably weaken Ukraine's position by making it less relevant as a country for gas transits. And the other thing is Germany's refusal to provide weapons to Ukraine. And that does not only include that Germany does not sell itself weapons to Ukraine, which is something that could be easily circumvented by buying weapons anywhere, but that Germany is also blocking weapons deliveries, for example, from the Baltic states who need permission to resell weapons that they once bought in Germany, or from the NATO procurement agency. And while diplomats are not confrontative on this issue, discontent is high, and civil society is even accusing, some people in civil society are even accusing Germany of sabotaging Ukraine's efforts to defend itself.
DW correspondent Matthias Böllinger reporting from Kiev. Thank you, Matthias.
Well, meanwhile, the U.S. State Department has refused to confirm media reports that it has ordered U.S. embassy staff in Kiev to leave Ukraine. It comes as tens of thousands of Russian troops gather at Ukraine's borders. This comes as Washington has sent its first shipment of a $200 million military aid package for Ukraine to bolster its defenses. A U.S. cargo plane landed at an airport in the Ukrainian capital with 90 tons of military equipment, mostly small arms ammunition. Russia has repeatedly denied that it's planning a new attack against Ukraine.
All right, folks. News around the world. There it is. Ukraine, Russia, NATO, the United States. Where do we sit? I certainly hope this is just, normal tensions between countries, and we figure this out and everything is worked out and Russia doesn't invade Ukraine. However, the optimist in me believes that this is going to be serious. I hope everyone is prepared for a serious event. Even if it doesn't happen, be prepared. Because if World War III kicks off, what would we endure here in the United States? Well, could be a lot. Could be a lot for ourselves, our children, and we have to be prepared for that. Are you prepared? I hope so. I don't want to scare anybody. I don't want to alarm anyone, but this is what is happening in the world. We get to see the Olympics, and we get to see all the countries compete against each other, which is beautiful. The mayor of Kiev, do you guys know who the mayor of Kiev is? It's the boxer, Vitaly Klitschko. Now, here's what I would like to see. I'd like to see Putin and Klitschko in a ring, fight it out. It won't happen, though. Because Klitschko would knock him out in 23 seconds. But it won't happen. That's not how it works. You know how it works? The poor boys and girls get to go fight off a war while the rich folks stay rich. That's how it works, unfortunately. Oh, boy. ABC News earlier today being Sunday, did a report with White House security advisor Jake Sullivan. So let's listen to, American news, and we'll end it here.
Let's take all this to White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Good morning, Mr. Sullivan. Really startling predictions this morning. ABC and others being told that Putin now has 70% of his troops in place to possibly launch a full-scale attack on Ukraine. The Ukrainians may not believe that, but how likely is that?
We believe that there is a very distinct possibility that Vladimir Putin will order an attack on Ukraine. It could take a number of different forms. It could happen as soon as tomorrow, or it could take some weeks yet. He has put himself in a position with military deployments to be able to act aggressively against Ukraine at any time now. And we are working hard to rally our allies, to provide material support to the Ukrainians, to reinforce our eastern allies, in particular Poland and Romania and the Baltic states, and at the same time to send a clear message to Russia that we are prepared to walk the diplomatic path to address our mutual security concerns if they're prepared to do so. Either way, Martha, we are ready. If they choose to go down the path of escalation instead, it will come at enormous human cost to Ukrainians, but it will also, we believe, over time, come at real strategic cost to Vladimir Putin.
The White House has backed off from saying an invasion could be imminent, but several members of Congress briefed on the situation say it is a near certainty. You said you believe it could happen. Do you think it is a near certainty?
I'm not going to make a prediction about what is going to unfold in the coming days. All I'm going to say is that we, the United States, under the direction of President Biden, are ready either way. We are ready if President Putin chooses to continue to engage in diplomacy, and we are serious about that, and we are ready to respond in a united, swift, and severe way with our allies and partners should he choose to move forward with a military escalation.
You talk about this diplomatic path, but 1,700 U.S. troops just arrived in Poland, part of the 3,000 going in, 300 more sent to Germany. The 18th Airborne Corps said these are combat-capable forces who stand ready to enhance NATO's ability to deter and defeat Russian aggression. They're a long way from Russia's border. That sounds like you're no longer trying to de-escalate the situation.
We have, since the beginning, for months now, as we have warned about the possibility of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, pursued a two-track approach: deterrence and diplomacy. And there's nothing inconsistent about the two of them. In fact, we believe that deterrence reinforces diplomacy. Those forces you just referred to have not been sent to fight Russian forces in Ukraine. They have been sent to defend NATO territory because we have a sacred obligation under Article 5 to defend our NATO allies and to send a clear message to Russia that if it tries to take any military action or aggression against our NATO allies, it will be met with a stiff response, including by the U.S. forces who are on the ground there now. But we have been equally clear, as you've seen from the paper that we sent to the Russians that's now been published publicly, that we are ready to have substantive discussions on matters of European security in the mutual interests of us, our NATO allies, and Russia. And we're ready to do that at the table with the Russians if that's the choice they make. If they make an alternative choice, as I said before, we're ready for that too.
I want to nail you down, if I can, a little bit on the timing of this. The Olympics end February 20th. The ground will be frozen, and that facilitates tank movement. So is that the most likely time frame, mid-February or after the Olympics?
We have to be prepared for the possibility of a contingency of a military action by Russia before the Olympics end, and we also have to be prepared for one after the Olympics end. So at this point, we're in the window, meaning that we can't just assume it's going to be a couple weeks off. Is that a possible scenario, or are there reasons to believe that it could happen in that time frame? Yes, but there are also reasons to believe that Russia, under the direction of President Putin, could take steps before then. So that is why we have worked so intensively to put ourselves in a position to create a united front with our allies, to flow material support to the Ukrainians, and to ensure that we have prepared the package of strong and severe economic measures that would be imposed in the event of a Russian action.
We saw Vladimir Putin at the Olympics this week standing next to President Xi. That is an economic powerhouse, China. Could that undermine your plans for severe sanctions?
Our view is that China is not in a position to compensate Russia for the economic losses that would come from our sanctions. That's the analysis that we and the Europeans share, and we believe the Russians and Chinese understand that as well. We also believe that when it comes down to it, ultimately, if Russia does choose to move forward, not only will it come at strategic cost to Russia, but if China is seen as having supported it, it will come at some cost to China as well in the eyes of the world, in the eyes of Europe, and in the eyes of other countries who are looking on now and sending a clear message that they would prefer to see diplomacy over war here.
And quickly, if you can, if he invades, we throw those severe sanctions at him. How does he respond? What's next? How does this end?
Well, we do have to prepare for Russia choosing to respond in a number of asymmetric ways against the United States and against our European allies. One of those potential ways, of course, is to try to use gas as a weapon against our European partners. And what President Biden has done is directed his team to find liquefied natural gas cargoes from other parts of the world that could be redirected to Europe to help make up for shortfalls that might accrue if Russia chooses to level gas as a political weapon. So we are preparing not just for our initial response, but for counter responses. And as I've said all along, the fact that we have been focused on this for the past few months, getting ready for diplomatic negotiations, but also getting ready to respond to military action, has put us in a position today where we are prepared for these contingencies, and we believe that we will emerge from any scenario here stronger and more united with our allies and partners.
Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Some rather grim news.
There it is, folks. Straight from the White House. That was Sunday. Today's Monday. What happens when you're president of the United States has a low rating? A low view. What happens? When Clinton was going through his troubles, what happened? We bombed an aspirin factory in Iraq. Wow. Create World War III, and all of a sudden, the president looks good. Let's not create World War III. However, we don't have the power to do that. But we have the power to prepare ourselves in case this is what our politicians want to do. And we have to defend our country if something were to happen to it. Say Russia and China are allied. It would be Russia, China, Belarus, North Korea, Iran, right? We got, Canada, Great Britain, Germany, Australia, a couple other good countries. I think we would fare pretty well on this World War III if it were to happen. But a lot of folks are going to die. I don't mean to scare folks. I pray this does not go off like it's sounding like throughout the news. Throughout all the things that I'm listening to, that I'm reading, that I'm watching, I pray this does not go the way it's looking. Russia continues to build up troops. They're moving closer and closer to the Ukraine border. They're deploying troops to Belarus, which is right on the Ukraine border. We're deploying troops as well as Canada, Great Britain, and Germany to Lithuania, Estonia, Poland. Folks, when I was in Afghanistan, I wasn't a part of it because I was on a PSD mission, platoon security detail. And I was guarding the colonel and I was a medic, providing medical support for the folks guarding the colonel and the sergeant major. And we did 170 missions in Afghanistan in like 8 months. It was long nights, long days. But I know Americans. We're fighters. We are fighters. And we argue. I was talking about Mayor Gore earlier, but if the fit hit the shan, who do you think would be the first guy rolling down with his AR-15 to Huber Heights? Once I squared away my neighborhood, who do you think it would be? It'd be me. Yeah. As broke as I am from the war and from all the other stuff I've done in my life, right? I would protect my hometown. Heck yeah. I got family, friends, right? And I think, you got several veterans that sit on city council, several veterans who are in the city. I mean, there's no way a foreign force is going to invade America and get away with it. It just won't happen. And I think Russia and China understands this. So they have to think about other options. EMPs. What's an EMP? Electromagnetic pulse, where they just detonate. Essentially is what it is they detonate a nuclear weapon in the atmosphere and they take out all of the electronics, so we're just dead in the water. Nothing works. No electronics works. Your vehicle doesn't work. Dialysis machines doesn't work. And they believe that we're going to feed on each other, but we need to help each other if the fit hits the shan. We need to help each other and do what's right. I pray it doesn't come to this. I pray it doesn't. But it's kind of scary times, folks. All right, that's... I'll leave you with that. We'll come back with some better news next time on Truman's Town Hall. It is what it is, folks. We're in a crazy time, man. 2022. Never thought I'd be here. Never thought I'd be here. It is what it is. I pray for the best, right? And prepare for the worst. I hope you guys are doing that. Just make sure you got a little food set aside in case the fit hits the shan. Stock up on your ammo, right? Practice your marksmanship. Practice, different things. Check out the internet. YouTube's got a ton of survival stuff. I mean, there's just so much you can research. But just be prepared. What's wrong with that, right? Being prepared. And if it doesn't happen, great. That's what we're all praying for. Peace. I done been through it, man. I don't want to go through it again. I definitely don't want my kids to end up going through it. Whew. Crazy times. Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading. And I'll talk to you next time.